Welcome everyone out there who is on Facebook and everyone who's joined here today. How many of you are new to Flower of Life events, never been? Okay. Of those people, anyone not familiar with me, what I do, what my work is here? You've watched some of my videos. Okay. All right, good. All right, because I usually like to give a little introduction, share my story, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time doing that today because that's out on YouTube. If you guys want to catch up on that, you can always do that in your own time. But we're here today to talk about things that are happening on the planet, to review what some of the most significant planetary alignments that are coming up are causing within us, because that's been a really significant focus for my channeling work. And that's why we're here, is for channeling. So I love to make this an interactive event with all of you here. It's an energetic or vibrational orchestration. So your questions, your intentions, everything that you bring make or create this message or this communication that we're going to experience today. I am a channel for many, many guides, a variety of teachers, masters, collectives, interdimensionals. So we'll be accessing many of those today. So I just want to start with what's going on the planet and some of the significant shifts. But I also want you to know that this is interactive, so please, if there's anything you want to talk about, anything you're experiencing, any questions that you have, just raise your hand, because this is a group collaboration, okay? So those of you who have been here before or are following my channeling work know that we've been getting a lot of messages lately about a pole shift that we're walking into in the spring months. And this has been pretty controversial because many of you who have recognition of pole shifts in the past kind of go straight to catastrophic physical events taking place on the planet. And so I first want to say that this pole shift that we're about to experience is not at all a physical catastrophic event that we're walking into. So anyone who is in fear of that, first of all, I have an article that I downloaded that is on the Awake and Empowered Expo magazine site that you can access and read about. I'm going to give a little bit of a summary about that here today, but I've also channeled some additional information. So I want to just spend a few minutes breaking down what's happening planetarily with this pole shift, how we're reacting to it, why it's coming, how it's connected to the solar frequencies, all these different things that are going on, because a lot of people have been sending me information about these big solar flares and solar storms that we have going on. And I believe it's all connected, okay? So all of you who are here obviously understand that we are magnetic beings, that we create our own reality, and every thought that we have, every emotion that we feel is in some way charged or connected to something else in the universe. So we're drawing and pulling to our experience everything that we are, that we're becoming, that we're making decisions around. Our soul contracts everything that we experience. And so many of you who also followed my work understand that we have many perspectives that we view our life through. We have a soul container or a soul perspective, which has been very singular. It's been very separate. It's been about us. It's been about the relationships we have in our lives. It's been about our jobs, all these things. And we also have a higher self container, which is a collective or planetary view. Now, we've been creating through both of these containers simultaneously, but many of us don't realize that everything that's going on in our singular experience has any bearing or weight on any greater vision here for humanity. But nonetheless, it's true. So everything we've manifested to date, now I'm talking big things like our government structure, our monetary system, our healthcare system, has been manifested through source energy by our thoughts, our emotions, our decisions, our creative energy in that singular container. Source energy is a good thing. So if we need something to heal ourselves, something is going to show up to heal us. But it shows up at exactly where we are. And that's how magnetics work. So where we were manifested a healthcare system, that was designed to our thoughts, our emotions, our ideas about ourselves, who we thought we were, and everybody contributed to that. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It just doesn't fit who we are now. So this is where we are. This is what we're experiencing. We've magnetized all of these things in the collective through a perspective that was very limited, very limited. So we also have DNA, and everyone knows that here on the planet we believe there are junk strands of DNA, and we only operate in a very limited number of DNA, and the rest of them don't mean squat. And I chuckle because we know better that our DNA is a crystalline structure of information. So we have this library within us that is pulling, drawing, and magnetizing based on our activation of it. So if you get back to the healthcare system that we manifested, for example, we manifested that in a very limited access of our library or our DNA, our realization of the self, what our abilities are, and who we're becoming. Well, what's happened now, and we can see this all over, is that humanity has raised its consciousness. We're now vibrating in a different speed, and we're magnetizing new things. We're magnetizing gifts and ideas and relationships to our ancient past and all of these beautiful expressions of this library that we hold within our DNA. And this has happened for so many different reasons. I mean, we've been working on ourselves. We've been hit by a variety of different planetary alignments and solar frequencies, but it's an orchestration, right? It's not just the planet showing up to support us. It's who we're becoming is calling for more. And I think that's one of the most significant messages I want to relay today, is that what we receive in this pole shift isn't just the planet responding to something that's random. We've called for this. So when we've had pole shifts in the past, back to the analogy of the healthcare system, we've had very physical interruptions of our planet because we've been very physically focused as a human race. So when these pole shifts took place, there were physical things. There were catastrophic things that happened that catapulted us into recreating things that needed to be cleared. But we're different people now. We're a different race than we were when those things occurred. So I want to give the analogy or the breakdown of how this pole shift works so everyone understands what's really going on. And many of you who are healers or who are here working in this field understand that we have meridians in our body. These meridians are basically grids. It's a grid system, an energetic grid system that channels light. And information is light. So if you can imagine looking inside this grid system that is your body and seeing all of the fragments of light moving through it, you would probably be overwhelmed with the amount of information that you carry as a singular being. And it's not just coming from you, because our electromagnetic field is plugged into something bigger than just us. It's divine source, it's creator, it's the earth. So there are grid systems running not only in our physical and non-physical structure, but within the earth, within the universe. So grid systems have been another important topic for those of you who followed my channeled work. There's an old grid that was formed here that was very materially based. Everything that we created organized information to manifest in the physical in a very third-dimensional way. What I believe is that this was highly influenced by a reptilian collective that is a part of our planet, and that reptilian collective has kept us very focused in physical, material, service to self, energy. So this old grid matrix, it exists, and we see it. It's all of the timelines that we created that don't feel good to us anymore. Maybe it's the position of work that we chose that no longer fits who we're becoming. Maybe it's a relationship that we manifested that doesn't really fit who we are anymore. It's the way we went to school and got a degree and something that doesn't make sense to us now. There's nothing wrong with those things. They're just timelines running in an old grid pattern. That's material and physical. But there's a new grid now. And the reason that new grid was formed is because of where we've been heading. So every time we have a thought, an emotion, an idea, we carry out that idea, we're stabilizing a new grid. So what the guides have been talking about is this old grid is broken. It's segmented from universal support. The reason for that is everything connects to everything else. So if humanity is creating in an old grid that is service to self, reptilian, and it's affecting everything else, something's got to happen to kind of protect the universe. And that's what happened. There's a council that oversees that, a multidimensional council. They've restricted access to that grid off planet. So it's become this vicious loop where we are repeating timelines, we're suffering, we're struggling, we can't rise above some of this karmic stuff that we've been going through. But the new grid is a wide open source potential. It's multidimensional, it is connected to universal support. And if we look at some of the things that are happening on the planet right now, like alternative healing that's coming in, blockchain, free energy technologies, these are new grid activities that are stabilizing a new dimension here. Right now, we're pulling between both, many of us, and that's our inherent struggle, is that we're pulling between these timelines that don't serve us anymore, but that are calling our attention elsewhere. This pole shift has to come in to stabilize this new grid. And so the information that I brought in recently has a lot to do with humanity liking stagnant energy. So think of this for a minute. We've been taught that we need to know what's coming next. We need to plan ahead. We need to have a savings account. We need to get the right job so that we can get the right salary so we can retire and all these things. So we like to know. We like to stay stagnant. And when we know where everything's coming from, we feel safe. Okay? So humanity's kind of adopted this, I know what it is now attitude, and I'm going to stay right here because right here is real safe. But that's not how we were created. We were created to evolve and to continually vibrationally change and adapt. And that's how we expand the universe. That's our connection to God. God is expansion. So we are expanding the human race, we are expanding the universe, we're expanding God in all directions when we continue to change and move. So what the guides have been saying is that we, even as awakened beings, so those of us who are really, I would say on the leading edge of consciousness, very awakened, moving towards that new grid, are getting really stagnant in our ways of thinking. And we're butting up against some resistance about how to make this shift. So when they say that, for me, a lot of the examples that I see are having these new ideas, but not understanding how to create them because we're trying to force them through old grid stuff. And I see that so much in my session work. It's like a common theme. Everyone that's coming to me has got this new idea, this new identity, something they want to do, but they're so frustrated because it's not working. It's not supporting them. It's not bringing in the currency. They don't have the people around them, the resources that they need. And when we explore it, it's because they have these old perceptions or ideas about how they need to run their energy to succeed in this world or to actually change something. We can look at this collectively, okay? We've manifested here in the United States a president that many people are not fond of and many people are rebelling against and trying to do things in physical to make physical change. But that's an energy, okay? So we're feeding energy all the time. Our currencies are always making something expand or contract in the universe. So we have to begin to step away from this old grid way of thinking, doing, expressing, being, and be more open to new grid ways of creating, living in compassion, living in peace, living in love, living in harmony, that really requires a big letting go or surrendering of the old way of doing things. All the pole shift is a switch in information. It's like dimensional information coming from a different direction. It's like an open access to change your reality. And so the example that was brought in is, think of yourself as the earth. You've got meridians running through you. You've got portals and stargates and all of these things. Think of yourself as the earth. If the brain as an organ was one pole and the stomach was another pole, and these organs were to shift places in your body, be some pretty catastrophic stuff going on. Because if the brain and your gut decided to move places, nothing would fire and connect and everything would be pretty messed up. But if the brain and the gut decided to send signals to each other differently, decided to communicate differently with each other, they could actually enhance your entire vibrational structure and change everything about the way that you are receiving. And this is what the pole shift is all about. It's not a physical change of direction so much as it is a vibrational exchange or changing places of dimensional information. You can think of it as that library within the DNA actually becoming more accessed and accessed in different dimensions than what you may be used to. So we kind of have this narrow vision that we have a pole shift that's going to affect everybody exactly the same. And that's never the case, because we're all unique signatures of humans. So some of us might be accessing 7 strands of DNA, working as a healer, creating a life in a certain dimension, direction, and they're going to be affected completely differently by this pole shift than someone who's operating in a 5-strand DNA. I'm not saying this is better or worse, okay? Just because you're operating in 7 strands versus 5 strands doesn't mean you're any better or any worse than anybody else. We're all here to access information differently. But just know that this pole shift is allowing that access to open, widen, and catapult you into new directions, new information, new strands of DNA, new dimensions. This is assisting us. We've called for this. We need a shakeup. We need to access ourselves in higher dimensions. And that's really what this is all about. So what about the solar energies? What is that? The solar frequencies are like the magnetic, I'll say, storage of our creative energy. So as we're creating here on the planet, we're going through our linear timeline, the sun is actually storing some of our creative energy. It's almost like a memory. You know, we have memories and we remember that time when we were little and we did this. But our light body was a part of that as well. Okay, so we have a physical body, a light body. They have 2 different experiences. One's very planetary and physical and in this dimension. The other one is gathering information from a different field. And all of that information is stored and it's given back to us at times when we need to remember or activate ourselves. So the solar frequencies are hugely beneficial, activating, crystallizing, and bringing us back more information about ourselves that we can't perceive right now in the field that we're in. All right? So again, limitation in our DNA, solar frequencies open that library. Pole shifts, they open that library and they turn it in a direction that we need to go. So how does this manifest for us? Well, I want to talk about it collectively and singularly, about what the effects of us are from this pole shift to the earth and for ourselves. Because there's many, okay? It's not a narrow pathway where it's just one thing. It's so many things. And the first thing I'll say is, we've talked a lot about hierarchies. Those of you who follow my work, how we've built up these hierarchies on the planet. And the hierarchies have to come down because we're moving into a more open source space, cooperation, collective energy, working together. This starts vibrationally first before it manifests in physical. So we know this. Everything happens first energetically before there's a time-space lag into the physical where we manifest it. Well, I've been channeling a book since 2015, and some of the information that's been coming in this book is about this reptilian consciousness that we talk about a lot. Their structure is not conducive to solar frequencies whatsoever. As a matter of fact, it's detrimental for them to have this energy within their structure. So if any of you are wondering why we have manifested chemtrail in the sky to block us from the sun, it has a lot to do with this collective that's here and how that energy affects them. Now, I don't know about you, but I've seen less incidents of chemtrail in the sky lately than I ever have before. I look at this as a good sign because I think there is a direct relationship between that energy and this reptilian collective, okay? So that's a positive. And number two, we are on this moving train of assembling soul pieces, fragmented soul pieces. So what does that mean? We are not just this singular person, this singular identity, and this singular body. Our soul is fragmented into many timelines running consecutively here on the earth and in other dimensions. We are Arcturian, we're Pleiadian, we're Sirian, we're human hybrids, we're plants, we're animals, we are everything. And so some of that information isn't really necessary for us to know. It would be really hard for us to know of ourselves, let's face it, here on the earth and physical in all of these different locations. It would be overwhelming, in fact. But what this pole shift allows us to do is pull in the most valuable experiences that we've had or are having in these other timelines. And I feel like a lot of people are beginning to experience this already. It's showing up like ideas. It's showing up like inspiration. Like I have so many people coming to me saying, I have so many new ideas, but I don't know what to choose. I have so many pathways appearing for me, but I don't know which direction to go, what's right, what's wrong, how I'm going to succeed. This is what this energy is all about. It's pulling those fragmented pieces back together for you to choose, because you're a free will sovereign being, to choose how you want to live in your highest intention. So this multidimensional access that we have now is even grander because we get to pull from our cosmic lives as well. How many in here having any cosmic experiences, communication, dreams, travel? Everyone's kind of like, yeah. I mean, I don't know about you, but I've been in dream state, traveling to other dimensions, seeing myself in other timelines. It's been so vivid lately. And that's the energy that's carrying us. It's coming up in really visceral ways for some people. For other people, it's coming up almost like a shift in timeline, like a new experience they want to walk into, change themselves or adapt to. Again, huge positive for humanity, okay? Now, collectively, again, this breaking down of hierarchies is also being supported by this pole shift. We talk a lot about disclosure and how we need to have disclosure happen now. Well, believe me, disclosure has happened. Those of you who are here who've had these experiences, I mean, we don't really need full disclosure. We know we're already a part of this universal cosmic family. However, we're still pushing for that energy, and there's a lot of hidden information out there, right? We don't have the grander picture of how our government's been interacting with these beings, what technologies are available to us. That's what this pole shift is also enhancing, because there's no information that's hidden or held back from anything or anybody in the universe. We have an Akashic record that runs between all things. We've just had limited access to that record. So every time there's a big announcement that something has been uncovered in an ancient archaeological site or from our ancient past, it's because we accessed that library of information in some other dimension that now vibrates similarly to who we are. So this pole shift is accentuating our ability to tune in and tap in collectively to that kind of information, But it's not just that. I use that as an experience or an example, but you can, across the board, look at all of these different areas of the planet that will be affected by what this pole shift is bringing. The medical institutions on our planet, right? Our government agencies, the way that currency flows, our monetary system, free energy technology, all of these things are enhanced by our ability to tune in, tap in, receive dimensional information. So we're becoming the people that match the records that we're here to implement. And I think it's exciting. It's an exciting time. So we are going to be, I would say, somewhat physically affected by this pole shift, and I don't say that in a fearful way at all. These meridians that we have in our physical body connect to the earth. So when the earth is making big shifts in her energy, we're going to feel that in our physical bodies. So really going back, and I talk about this, I think, almost every session that we do, a couple of years. The Arcturians were talking about how our physical material in 2018, 2019 would be challenged. And that's because of this adjustment. So when you think of physical material, your body, your skin suit, your bones, your muscles, all of those things, they're consciousness, right? They're light. We formed our identities, our physical appearance, our physical anatomy through our belief structure and the way that we pull and draw information and magnetize all of this. So we have physical DNA and we have crystalline DNA. Our physical DNA holds that stuff that we know from our parents' parents, their parents' parents. And our crystalline DNA is galactic. It overrides that stuff, it integrates with that stuff, and it changes our physical material. We become lighter. And so I know many right now have been struggling with exhaustion, more incidents of physical disease, discomfort, or pain, but mostly the tiredness, the exhaustion, the overwhelm is what I'm picking up on, and what the guides are saying is probably going to play out here for a little while in 2018. So how do you combat that when we have all of this going on? Well, really focusing on stress relief techniques are the best tool for humanity right now, because it's a buildup of energy and new information that has to integrate in the field. Okay, so all these meridians and this light that's flowing through the meridians is increasing the information that flows through every bit of our physical being. And that's a lot, right? There's a time-space lag between how we integrate that, what new realizations we come to, what knowledge we come to, what we draw. People who have gone through big vibrational shifts know that your life will change really quickly when that happens. When you raise your consciousness or your vibration in a short period of time, all of a sudden, the glue between you and people, places, things, experiences kind of crumbles apart. And this big space opens up for new stuff to draw in. I think a lot of us are going to be going through that experience again in 2018. But physically, if you're having those types of challenges, exhaustion, headaches, incidents of disease, all of these things, the stress buildup in the body can be combated through really simple techniques. Meditation, massage, cranial sacral, acupuncture have been some of the most important tools that the guides have brought in. A lot of us are having significant hormonal interruptions because of the electromagnetic connections between our meridians and our brain and how that whole process works, right? So again, if you're having any kind of hormonal imbalance in the body, you're finding yourself having to adjust hormones or thyroid or whatever that may be, consider that it could be a temporary shift from this planetary alignment that we're going through. So the guides especially talk about bringing hormones back into balance with these tools as well. But they even brought up relationships in our lives, being a catalyst for that. Because when we have a very significant relationship with someone that we trust, we love, that we're exchanging with, the resonance between the heart chakras can bring us back into balance. which has a huge effect on our hormones. We think of it as so complicated, but we can do really simple things to bring that hormonal balance back into adjustment. I've had some people lately who have been having digestive issues. This has been another common theme. Some of us who are moving really fast through this adjustment, who are eating raw, who are juicing, can really move out of their body pretty fast. And the digestion can sometimes keep up with this lighter vibration that we're accessing and bringing in. So the guides have been talking a lot about some, I don't want to call them denser foods in terms of chemicals, we know that, but more like an Ayurvedic type of a grounding energy that you might bring in, like a more sweet potato or, more kind of spice that's warming in the body, as opposed to just accessing a colder frequency. So again, everyone's different. Everyone's pulling and drawing information differently, and everyone's receiving the, adjustments from this differently as well. So consider some of that when your physical body might be feeling that way. And if you're tired, rest. It's the best way to integrate. Just sleep. I've been sleeping a ton lately. I've just listened to my body, and it just needs the extra rest right now. Mm-hmm. Questions, comments, experiences, anything? Okay. Yeah.
So scientifically, they say there's actually a portion of your brain called the reptilian brain.
Mm-hmm.
Is that in correlate with reptilian consciousness?
Yeah, excellent question. So she's asking about the reptilian brain, and does that correlate with the reptilian consciousness? It does, and it's a really interesting topic as well, because something that I've channeled a lot about in my book. So if you go back to the creation of the human collective, we were created in the likeness of many races. So we had races ascend here into physical and collectively create our physical. This is why our DNA is 12-strand crystallized. It holds the genome of all and many of these races. The reptilian collective or consciousness was one in benevolent form. So when humanity was created, benevolent reptilians were a part of that creation. And the reptilian mind is really a beautiful organism that we received from them. So this is a bit controversial. I know some others might talk about this differently. The reptilian mind gives us the ability to perceive, discern, and manifest through the mind, because we have to use the mind in correlation with this technology that we were given. But there was a catastrophic event in this reptilian collective and in their star system. There was a timeline split that happened there. And in that timeline split, many of them were not able to survive in the structure that they had received. Some went one way, some went another way. So when I talk about a reptilian collective that's within the earth, this collective manifested here because they saw an opportunity to survive, to live, to manifest, to create through this earth and through humanity. The way that they do that is through the mind, because they are a mind-driven organism. So the reptilian collective does not have an emotional body. It's not a bad thing. They don't need it. They manifest through the mind, they shape-shift through the mind, they create through the mind without any need to have or feel an emotion around that or project an emotion. Many races have integrated their emotional bodies. The Pleiadians, for example, they talk about this all the time. They've integrated their emotional body to the point where they don't feel emotion like we do. They are just in a place where the emotional field around them adjusts to their desire. Right? But as humans, we get so, off track in our emotions because of the mind. So here we have this reptilian collective, which I believe is vibrational, energetic, not physical, that is here, that is not able to manifest or create, needs an organism through which to do that, and has an organism in humans that has a mind, right? Similar to ours. And so it's been very important for them to keep humanity focused and singular and have an ego that's turned on them to relate to their outer world as something that is causing them to manifest, as opposed to manifesting through their own experience. Okay? So our reptilian mind has almost been hijacked in a sense. And we can see how this has happened. Media is one of the big tools that has been implemented here on this planet to keep that mind in a singular focus, right? And take us away from our creative ability. So I actually believe that as we're ascending, we're reinstalling the reptilian mind back into the technology in the way that it was always meant to function. Because it's an intricate part of our system that is not working for us the way it should work for us or was meant to work for us. Does that make sense? Yeah. So when we are operating in the mind, or we're creating through the mind, what's happening is our emotions are following our mind. How many of us know this? Yeah. So we have all of the media projecting us into potentials that are scary and fearful. And now we're scared and we're fearful in the emotional body and we're vibrating. That's our vibratory tool. Our emotions are our vibration. So now we are matching potentials and we are magnetizing information that matches a fearful vibration. That's a really simplistic way of saying the way that the reptilian mind is now directing our vibration. So we look around, we see fearful things, we tune into fearful stuff, we turn into negative stuff, we respond to that in our emotional body, and we are manifesting a collective experience and a singular experience that matches that potential. So in order to get this back, it really becomes an interplay between our mind and our emotional body, and I think that's simply what's called for in this time. A lot of people are talking about this in relationship to Christ consciousness, divine feminine. It's compassion, it's present moment awareness, it's sensing where our emotions are taking us and working backwards to find the cause. And saying, okay, I see now the relationship between the mind and where my frequency has been creating, and making changes in your life around that. Because, again, there's a collective connection to this. So we can be conscious beings, we can be awakened beings, and we can be screaming at the problem and getting really angry and tuning into a lot of angry stuff and still be manifesting in an old grid or be rerunning timelines in an old grid. That's one of the reasons I also think this pole shift is coming, to shake us out of this higher consciousness tuning into what's bad and wrong and tuning us into what's positive and right. So we can now see with our full spectrum of perception, right? Yes?
When is this pole shift happening?
I don't have an exact date for you, but the guides have been saying between March and April, there's going to be a vibrational shift of the poles. I feel like we're already feeling that build up right now. So I don't think this is a one-day, couple-hour event. I think this is an exchange that's taking place that's going to level out, peak, and then level out again, right? It's just like when we went through back in 2017 with the solar eclipse and all of these, right, vibrational changes. Just a different area of the planet that's pulling this information, right?
And this could be measured scientifically, is that?
You know, that's a really great question. I don't know the answer to that question, but we should ask that of the guides. I feel like for us, the Schumann frequency is always a good measurement of how things are moving and where they're going, and we can track that. We can also track the incoming solar frequencies because I think there's a tie between this pole shift and how those are ramping up. I feel like when the intensity of these solar storms is coming, it's in direct correlation to this shift of the poles. It's like the crystalline core within Mother Gaia and the DNA within her accessing these solar frequencies to assist the process. I'm not a scientist though, so yeah, not my area of expertise. Yeah.
This is going to affect people with schizophrenia or bipolar.
I think that's a good question for the guides. For me, I would say that, I'm sorry? Oh, okay, the question was, sorry for those of you out there, how will this pole shift affect people with schizophrenia, for example, or mental disease? I see your point. When you're pulling or drawing identities from other timelines, this could catapult an issue with something like that. But those people are probably already doing that to a degree, right? Tuning into their fragmented soul pieces in other timelines, which is why they have this quote-unquote definition or disease that they're struggling with. I think you should ask the guides that question. I feel like everyone is so unique in how this is going to take place, because structurally within us, we're all at different, I don't want to say speeds because we're all vibrating at the same speed right now, but we're at different, I guess, points of access within our DNA, right? Yeah. Good question for the guides. I just have to say I don't know to that one. Any other questions? Okay. All right. So part of this experience is that we do a live channeling, and that's what we'll do next. I am a trans channel, which means that I step completely outside of my body. These guides, beings, and collectives that are here to support us are going to step in. They speak through me. It's a vibrational exchange. So if you can't keep up with the lingo, don't worry. Sit, breathe, meditate. You're receiving it exactly the way that you should. We also take donations. We are here from Flower of Life Center for Human Evolution, so we will pass a basket. It is not required that you donate, but we use this money to pay for this venue today and our projects. If you're not familiar, we have an expo coming up in September. We have a children's event, a youth event coming up this summer in August. So we have a lot of different things that we're working on that we support as well. I do take questions, and we write the questions down. So there are cards and pens. The reason we do that is so we can get the question on the camera so everyone can hear it. We try to keep questions to collective energy, meaning that if it's something really personal to you, we try to phrase it in a way that would help everybody, okay? All right. Sometimes we get processes, activations we don't really know until we get into the channeling. Okay, we're going to hear from the Council today. We are the Council of Light. We are a 12th dimensional collective that is ranging in a variety of different dimensional fields coming together as one to support the universe as well as humanity. It is our intention to work with information as it is flowing through the grids. This information is often assembled by us such that we can understand its rate of speed or vibratory reaction between two different energetic centers, such as the Earth and alternate star systems. We are complementing the activation of the human race through the grids, and it is our pleasure to do so. We come today with a message in which we believe will assist humanity during a very important shift that is taking place within your planetary structure. We honor that who you have become that is calling forth this energy within Gaia, and of course the support that is coming in to assist her vibrational interaction in your field. However, that which is within you, this divine record within your DNA, is truly what we wish to focus on today in relationship to this energetic experience, because those of you who have a direct understanding of how collective consciousness is inherently connected to every decision that you make understand the gravity or the responsibility that you hold in relationship to this DNA access. Because access within your divine record or your DNA, it holds many dimensional experiences, not just those that perhaps were the most pleasant or the most blissful experiences, but also those in which you have struggled, those in which you have experienced darkness or difficulty, not only here on the earth, but of course in other dimensions. You see, within your divine record, you are connected to everything that is, was, or ever has been. That includes all that is, was, or ever has been in every vantage point. So when this record becomes triggered, and access is experienced. There is a tool or a mechanism that is most beneficial for you to choose in relationship to your application of this information. This tool is your free will. And we want to speak to how free will works in the midst of integrating such tremendous amounts of information. Because you see, you as a fragmented soul have the ability to draw, use, and experience yourself and the information of yourself as a creative essence, meaning that who you are in this moment becomes enhanced by who you are in other fields of potential. So you in another timeline may in this moment be experiencing something that is not exactly pleasant, that perhaps is even detrimental to you in some way. But yet, your DNA is accessing that information. As you begin to integrate that information, you may begin to take on the fear, the energy of that experience in a way that is limiting you in your physical reality. So our first message to you today is that as you go through this transition or this shift within the earth, that as emotions are rising or experiences are calling you that may feel difficult, dense, or heavy, that you bring this free will mechanism into play. This, of course, is available to you and always has been available to you in your soul container, but nonetheless is a very positive reminder of how you are able to choose your reality. We're not saying that difficulty does not happen, and of course, as you're integrating difficult timelines, there will be memories or remembrance of things that you've experienced, both in this linear timeline that match that frequency, as well as in other multidimensional experiences that may come to light. Now, you have a choice in how you perceive this, because in the midst of all chaos, there is a divine purpose. There is nothing that you experience here within your earthbound experience that is not in some way interconnected to your blueprint or your divine intention. It is the way in which you react to each of these situations that allows your free will to integrate or choose the purpose or the meaning behind it. So in other words, if you have something going on in another timeline that is dense, heavy, or in some way detrimental to your soul, it must be accentuating your entire vibrational experience. Otherwise, it would not be happening in that timeline, you see. So when you have access to information, you vibrationally will match frequencies that manifest similar experiences. And we want to take you into the analogy of karma. Many of you are used to running patterns in your soul frequency, and those patterns may be karmic. We like to give the classic example, the Pleiadians are actually assisting us here. We like to give the classic example of how humans will often manifest the same relationship or type of relationship over and over and over again. The reason that they do this is that they hold a pattern or a frequency that matches something from their past, and they're making a choice to continue that pattern. In other words, they haven't done anything, they haven't thought anything, they haven't felt anything that causes the pattern to change. It's not necessarily about just doing in physical, it's also about the way you vibrationally accept your identity through the pattern. So here and now, as the poles are shifting and more access is given, you are experiencing timelines that may be karmic as well, from other aspects of your soul frequency or from your multidimensional experiences through time. But the way in which you perceive these has everything to do, through your free will, by how you implement, integrate, and use them to your highest fulfillment. So we know that many of you are feeling this energy as a density within the physical structure. This may show up, of course, as exhaustion, as physical harm or disease. But the way that you tune into that experience, the way you perceive that experience, may be one of two things. There is physically something wrong with me, is one way to perceive this. Or my body is integrating more knowledge and adjusting itself to something new. These are two very opposite perspectives to hold, yet very valuably different in their frequency. Because if you are becoming more citizens of light, if you are holding more of your access to your own DNA, you are vibrationally integrating your light body such that you are directing consciousness that much easier, that much quicker through time. So if you perceive your physical body to be failing you versus you perceive your physical body to be accentuating a very important shift, this opens the space of potential or restricts it to source energy. And you can see the relationship between this message, old grid, new grid, and how you are moving between timelines. Because the perception that my physical body is failing me restricts the energy around source such that a physical experience must continue. You've now defined an imprint on a timeline continuum that will match and draw the experiences in these other timelines in which you are suffering and struggling. But if you perceive that the body is only adjusting, you open the field of potential to source such that regardless of what suffering or struggling is going on in these other timelines, you're not only able to integrate and receive higher wisdom or knowledge about that struggle, but you are also able to heal it. The reason is that it is not separate of you, but it is collective in energy. And when you open the field of potential to source, what you are doing is you are receiving in a new way this information or knowledge and not restricting it through your free will to something physical, something relatable to what you already know, something that you've already predetermined to be not advancing or enhancing your experience. So we as a Council of Light encourage you to use your free will in each situation that you experience this traumatic effect, either within your physical, within your mental, within your emotional bodies. And to pause for a moment to consider that everything that you are feeling may just be an adjustment. It may be an assembly of information. It may be new access or new records coming in to support that which you have already become or that which you have already desired to become. We are in great support of humanity in this time as you undergo this transition. And of course, in much love and light, we are always pleased to take questions.
Will the scientific community be able to measure the upcoming pole shift?
We are the Pleiadians. We're pleased to address this question. Your scientific community is not able to keep up with the vibrational rate of speed in which the planet is ascending, we would say. And the reason for this is very similar to the reason that has, or the analogy that has been brought in by the Council. Your scientific community is very based in physical analogy and numbers to measure. And numbers in themselves are given limited definitions by humanity. And we'll give you an example. Many of you have an age that you can count in linear years for your time on this planet. Well, in counting those numbers and defining your linear years through humanity's past, you are also limiting yourselves, because what we see right now is a vibrational shift in how you are physically adapting to new consciousness. In other words, you are able to live far longer in linear years than what your mind is able to hold in relationship to your belief patterns. So the measurement of this vibrational shift, although we would say there are several components that can be looked at, will be very difficult to quantify through your scientific means. But what we do believe is that humanity is now manifesting new scientific tools that are assisting your collective to understand better the way that these transitions are taking place and the effects they're having within the physical body. But you see, vibrationally, as you are all changing, you are accessing a similar rate of speed. And that similar rate of speed, we believe, is going to be the crux of how your scientific measurements will begin to change. Because humanity is not yet caught up with what your energy has assembled in this collective field. Now, as you move into, we would say, the late 2020s, many of these new technologies and scientific advancements will begin to ground here. We believe that will be based more on a relationship of plasmic energy to your intergalactic selves and meridians, measuring the speed of time through these plasmic states, because essentially this is how you're ascending. The information within your DNA holds a relationship to plasma, and that plasma is an energetic field that is difficult to measure based on your physical advancements. But these non-physical advancements that we speak of in the late 2020s will be more directed through plasmic states of energy and how they can be harnessed, not by specific measurements of numbers, but especially by their effect on humanity, plants, animals, and the entire universe.
Is the behavior of the sea tides lately related to the shift? Like, for example, the waters receding on beaches at night in many different places, and lakes and rivers drying like has never happened before in this lifetime.
Yes, and this is the Arcturians coming in to explain this, and they're very pleased to enter this transmission. What we wish to say is that the water bodies on your planet are a crystalline source of energy. They are a consciousness. They come from within Mother Gaia, and they are often utilized by Mother Gaia when she is going through her own transition. Think of yourselves, for example, after you have accessed an energetic or vibrational shift or a healing. There is often a need to replenish the structure with water. This enhances the rate of speed to come into an equilibrium or a harmonization with the energy that you have just received. The reason for this is that water is a crystalline mode of transportation. So when you think about your meridians and holding information as fragments of light, water has the ability to cohesively bring fragments of light together in a crystallized state and integrate them throughout the structure. That's why you, as humans, are made up mostly of water. So what you see happening with the tides has much to do with the need for Mother Gaia to use her own water to assimilate these vibrational shifts, because she is a living, breathing being. And as she integrates this pole dimensional shift that you are experiencing, she's replenishing her own crystalline state. So what we believe is that the magnetism of the poles is also causing this anomaly or relationship, but it also must have a purpose. So we can say that the magnetism or the shift of the poles as it is reversing is pulling, drawing, or magnetizing this water energy further into the earth. But as it levels out, as it comes back into its full alignment, this water must replenish itself. And the reason for this is that Gaia will be again purging or releasing even a new form, we'll say, of crystallized water, because we, as the Arcturians, are very interested in the sacred geometric patterns that exist in the water. So we're watching very carefully the way this water is being in some way charged by this experience. So as the water is returned to many of your water bodies, it will have a different galactic substance, we'll say, or makeup of genetic form. Mm-hmm.
In regard to our dreams, is there a way we can distinguish between the dreams that are simply processing our day and those that are related to multidimensional information and astral travel? I remember 4 to 5 dreams a night, and it's hard to know what to focus on.
We are the Pleiadians. We are pleased to give some clarity around dream state. And first we would say that when you are in a dream state, you are time traveling. You see, many believe that the subconscious is making up form or visions that you experience in your sleep. However, When you are sleeping, you go into a basic rhythm in which you let go of the egoic structure that is holding you back from creation. In other words, your light body is allowed to release and move freely throughout your own timelines. So it is difficult for us to discern what is or what is not time travel. We would say dream state in many ways is time travel regardless of what you are dreaming. But the difference is something that we want to speak to more in terms of interpretation of the information. So many of you have dreams that do not make sense or may seem very random in their order or chaotic in their vision. And this is time travel that is being interpreted by you at a slower speed. So the body is always time traveling when it is sleeping. It is just bringing the information back in different speeds or dimensions and accessing that information to the rate of speed it is able. And we'll give you a very specific example of this. Many are familiar with literal time travel on ships, for example, or visitation from beings that are outside of this earthbound plane. When this is happening, you are time traveling as well, because you cannot experience a being or a ship if you are in this dimensional reality. The density is far too great for you to be able to perceive that information or communication. So what happens is you enter a plasmic state. This plasmic state allows you to leave your density or your physical material behind in order for the light body to have an experience. But when that light body comes back to the physical, whether it comes back in dream state to awakening or it comes back from a visitation to the earth, there's an adjustment that must take place. So the plasma always exists within you from any experience, but these experiences may happen in different dimensions. So it may take a while for you, for example, to remember or recall an intergalactic experience because the plasma is very difficult for you to integrate. Or your physical mind may not have the reference point to interpret that experience in a way that is human. And this is what we see most with dreams, is that you are accessing divine travel and bringing the information back to a human mind that does not have the reference point to recall or remember it in the way that it was actually experienced. For you in particular, we would say in order to sense these dreams and remember them as travel, stating a strong intention before bed or even using crystals would be a very preferred method of projection, because plasmic energy is essentially a crystalline energy that is different than your physical body. Humans weren't designed to hold plasma in the way that other beings were designed to hold plasma. And this is why often you can use crystals here on the planet to perform energetic tasks, because crystals hold intention in such a way that you can manifest through them form. And so sleeping with specific crystals that you resonate with, stating intentions to remember your cosmic travels can be very beneficial for you in assembling that plasmic information. Ultimately, we believe that many humans will feel within the physical body these differences or changes in speed. In other words, not every time travel is a time travel that you are meant to remember or that is significant to you in physical form. So oftentimes there will be a specific dream state that you move into that really shakes you up in some way. You feel it as if it is real and you retain it in so much detail. And the reason for that is it was in fact significant and a match to your vibration and holds purpose within your walk of life. Mm-hmm.
I find that I want to spend more and more time alone, and I have less and less patience as a parent with young children. What advice do you have for empathic introverts during this time while maintaining responsibilities to family?
Yes, we are the Pleiadians, and we're pleased to speak about this. You as an empathic being have many levels of empathy that you experience on a day-to-day basis. Some of that empathy may be very strong in situations where children perhaps are having difficult struggles or humans are not matching your vibration. And when you are home in your own environment and you are not surrounded by other people, that empathy, of course, will change in the way that it is felt or the dramatic essence of its exchange. But as you are moving through this space-time continuum by which you are accessing more strands of DNA, what we believe is that you are recalibrating your technology to use empathy differently. You see, here on the planet, humans have had a very big misunderstanding about empathy. Empathy is a form of communication. It is actually a very advantageous form of communication. But many humans, in the same way they are allowing the emotional body to follow the frequencies of the mind, are allowing their empathy to follow the frequencies of others. And so during this time, when you are becoming more extra sensitive, if you are not calibrated to that empathy in a way that it serves you, it can cause this desire to want to segment yourself or stay separate of those beings that you are actually telepathically exchanging with at a far greater rate of speed. So there are many different, we would say, outlets for this to recalibrate it, and it is very dependent on each unique physical being, because each unique physical being is meant to drive their empathic vehicle differently than other human beings are meant. In general, we wish to say that the space that you feel around you or the clearing that you feel around you is really just your empathic ability to protect yourself from others. And that protection, it truly goes back to the way that humanity has envisioned itself as very physical, because what you believe is that that physical contact or that physical closeness is what's causing this empathic gift to emerge or detrimental experience to emerge. But in reality, your empathy is turned on all of the time. So if during those times when you're in your quiet space, you begin to work with or play with your empathy as a tool, you will hone the ability to turn it on or off at your will. And that's really the goal for humanity, because as you move into a more collective space, empathy as a singular structure is going to, we believe, leave the planet, because you are going to become more of a resonant culture, meaning that it's not going to be necessary for you to feel the pain or the difference in vibration or intention between you and another. You're always going to be harmonizing that or in some way balancing that. And that's essentially who you are as empathic beings. It's just that you're not using it as a balance or a harmony. So we would say in meditation, begin to use your empathy to project through time, to go into the scenarios that are most bothersome for you, and pull or draw information or energy such that it enhances your experience there. So when you walk into the energy with children, you're able to modify that empathy by knowing that in non-physical you are able to do the same. And we'll give you an example of this. Many human beings are not aware that they can use the higher self as a valuable tool for communication and for empathic or resonant exchange. Many of you perceive very difficult conversations that you must have with other humans in your life. And those difficult communications are based on words. But if you are to go in meditation and initiate the higher self or welcome the higher self into your experience, and then communicate with the higher self of that person as if they were in the room with you, there is a very valuable, we'll call it platform, that you are creating when you do this. It's an energetic resonance. So when you are empathic and you're feeling the difficulty between you and another, it is the resonance that you are picking up on that is actually not in harmony. So harmonize the resonance before you walk into the situation. See those beings, those children in the room with you in meditation. Bring their spirit in, bring their essence in, bring their higher selves in. Communicate with them from your higher self. Set the tone for empathy. Relate to their excitement, their highest selves, their most positive entities or energies. And when you begin to use that tool consistently, you'll see that the physical matters not.
When you wish to conclude other timelines that do not serve you and you have experienced your ability to dimensionally jump, how do you continue in the newer timelines that you are beginning to create without falling back into older timelines?
Yeah. The Pleiadians want to explain this, and we're very pleased to do this because we believe that this time on the planet is one of great transition of timelines for humanity, and you do have many. Many of you do not even perceive in physical the number of timelines that are connected or running between your energy and others. So when you have these old timelines that are connected to the old grid, the way you can tell the difference is they're vibrating at a very slow rate of speed. And the reason that we feel humanity is becoming so bothered by these old timelines and wanting to separate themselves from them so dramatically is that you are vibrating so much faster now that these timelines that are so slow and don't match your speed feel that much heavier. They feel that much more dense to you. But moving into new timeline energy has two very strong potentials to allow you to override the old timeline without any physical interruption. And this is the problem, is that humanity believes they must make physical decisions in order for physical things to happen. That is an old grid energy. So where you've been directed in the mind and you've been creating these old grid timelines has everything to do with physical for physical. It has to do with amount of time for amount of currency. It has to do with amount of input for amount of receiving. But the new grid operates as a full potential collective source energy. It does not rely on any narrow pathway to receive anything. So when you begin projecting through time energetically and directing your consciousness, it far overweighs these physical timelines that you so want to tie up and change. So the two ways we want to speak of are, first of all, the projection of your consciousness through time. We believe that this is a very valuable time on your planet to begin to use the tool of the mind and the emotional body in meditative states to project your potentials, meaning that what your strongest desires are, what your new identity is, and to feel yourself in that space in such a way that you resonate as that being. Resonating as that being draws the magnetic pull that is the glue between what you're creating in the new grid and the resources, because this is what we hear from humanity, is that their old grid timelines are providing the resources, their new grid timelines are not providing the resources. Well, this open field of potential is a very important thing to consider, because when you are moving between these grids, open source must be a factor in how you create. So in other words, if you have an old timeline that perhaps is a third dimensional job that is manifesting currency for you to pay your third dimensional bills and to take care of your third dimensional needs, but you have a new idea, a new creative timeline energy that you are supporting in the new grid that is not. It is typically because energetically, although you have a new idea that's new grid, you're using mechanisms, methods, tools, or imprints to create it in a way that is still material. Open source means that we bring information into many different dimensional fields. Think of the cut of a diamond. If you are to look through the cut of a diamond, you'd be able to perceive yourself through many different angles, through many different lights, through many different perceptions. This is your creative energy. And this is how your creative energy is meant to run and be sourced. So open source, for example, is offering something without any expectation. But this is not practical for humanity in its current rate of speed. So bringing in something that is a true offering in connection with something that is an old grid expectation balances or harmonizes the field, such that you don't have to worry about cutting that old timeline off and separating it from you. It becomes blended, it becomes integrated with what you're creating in the new grid, because source energy surrounds it. It's not limited. It holds open space and open potential. And so for humans in this time, open source is a difficult concept because, again, you see in black or white, and you believe I either must open source everything or I must have a condition around everything. Well, it is a blend of conditioning and open source with neutrality that allows you to move at this rate of speed that brings these new timelines and anchors them into your experience. What that means is you must open yourself up to offer in many different dimensions.
Could you share some information about what's known in spiritual circles as the event? For example, the time frame, how to prepare, what to expect?
We're the council, and we're pleased to answer this question. You see, here on the human planet, you have become very conditioned to tie into potentials in ways that must show up as one thing or another. And we want to give you our perspective of how potentials are created, because from our vantage point, we cannot see one event. All we see is that humanity is continuing to expand and create potentials that they may step on. So it is very difficult for us to say that there will be one singular event that would catapult humanity in any one direction. We see collective potentials of catastrophic events. We see collective potentials of free energy technologies. We see collective potentials of heaven on earth. And you are vibrating at a speed now in which many of these potentials are becoming matched in a higher vibrational way. So this event that is spoken of may be interpreted as one thing or another. But you see, everything is an orchestration between all things. There could never be one event here on the planet that would be the end-all, be-all of your ascension. Because as you continue to ascend, you are calling from the planet and from the universe everything that you need to adjust to that ascension. So let us give you an example. What if this event was planned to ascend humanity, but you had already, between the time of now and that event, ascended beyond where that event was going to be assisting to you? Would it happen? No, it would become adjusted or shifted, or you would draw and pull through the orchestration of God and the universe another collective event. And you see, the way things are happening right now on your planet, we see pockets of consciousness that are existing. And we've talked a lot about timeline splits. Let's relate this event to the timeline split. Many of you believe or have been led to believe that the timeline split will be a one-time event in which the planet will change and collective consciousness will remove itself from the planet in physical form, and there will be two separate Earths. We believe that there will be two-dimensional realities in solid form existing on your Earth at the same time. And in many respects, there are three right now. We see humans who are resonating more in a third dimension, some who are in a fourth dimension, and you do have a group of humans that are holding a fifth dimensional space here already. But that doesn't mean that one event is going to catapult humans beyond their physical form. What we see taking place is a gradual shift, and that gradual shift or progression has already begun and will continue to take place. Ultimately, by the time that you reach the end of 2019 in linear form, based on our vibrational calculations, you will be existing in two separate dimensions on Earth in physical form. That does not mean that you won't recognize each other in different dimensions. It means that you will coexist with humanity in two different dimensional realities that are creating in different grids. Now, ultimately, this old grid that has been spoke about, this third dimensional grid, the plan or the trajectory that you're on is to disable this grid such that it becomes disconnected from the Earth. In other words, such that no more creation can take place in that old grid. And this could never happen overnight. Everything that you are creating right now is enhancing that grid's potential to either collapse or become strengthened. And just like the sun rises and the sun sets, there is a gradual dawn to dusk. There are movements that are taking place between these grids and these realities. You can see in your own experience, many of you, how you are shifting between these different timelines and find yourselves in the midst of them in the same day. So this event, we would say, is not something that we subscribe to as much as we see an energetic transition that will continue to take place, in which this new grid or this fifth dimensional reality will continue to become stabilized and will become stronger, such that the third dimensional grid or dimensional energy will collapse.
How will the pole shift affect people with mental illness, schizophrenia, bipolar? Will it help align them to center and help us understand one another?
Yes, we're the Pleiadians, and we're pleased to address this question. We do believe that those who have mental illness on your planet are made up of many different collectives. Some of them are very similarly to the conversation previous, focused in old grid and running their identities through old timelines. Some of them are new grid energies that are realizing their gifts in a new way. So ultimately, when we look at mental disease, we have to consider that patterns are running here on the human planet from generations and generations of defining factors. In other words, mental disease exists on your planet because humans have defined mental disease, or in many ways manifested mental disease as a definition and an entire structure around it to support it. Much of this, of course, is old grid. Now, those that have mental disease are all operating in different crystalline states. You see, many who have struggles within their energy field may be so crystal that they have a very engaged third eye. And that third eye is taking them beyond this dimension to perceive information that is not here on this planet. But they don't have the mechanism, the support, or the tools in order to use that in the way that is beneficial. Very similar to empathy in that way, that many have been dealing with their empathy as opposed to directing their empathy, because they have perceived this gift in a way that has been very limited. So one of the things that we see in relationship to mental disease is that in order for these beings to heal, the entire consciousness has to shift its reality or its perception around the disease. It can't just be the healing of the individuals carrying the disease. It has to be that the consciousness aligns with an acceptance of this such that it can change. This is one of the advantageous aspects we see of this pole shift. It's not necessarily that these beings will experience a more dramatic struggle in their lives. Some of them may integrate the crystalline structure to bring this into a harmonized energy. But of course, it's going to be quite different for each being on the planet. The most beneficial thing, back to that statement, is we see the collective accessing higher dimensional information. What that means is that humanity has the ability to perceive those with mental disease differently, manifesting new tools, manifesting new institutions, manifesting new teachings and techniques to assist them in stepping into their identities better. Most of those that carry this type of discordant energy have some relationship to the grids that are extra sensitive, or in some way carry a relationship to their dimensional access that isn't balanced here on the planet. And stepping into this balance requires more than just an energetic adjustment within them. It requires the contracts that they have with their families, their soul partners, and the entire human collective to balance in its energy.
How can someone distinguish between the various light languages that are spoken? Does each language have a different purpose or meaning?
Yeah, we bring in the Sirians to answer this question, and they're very pleased to enter this transmission. And what we wish to say is that light language in itself is being adapted and translated by humanity very uniquely as well. In the same way that we have spoken about plasmic state previously in this transmission, we want to bring that conversation back into this question. Because when you are speaking light language, you are traveling beyond this dimension. Your physical material is in a plasmic state where dimensionally your light body is able to travel beyond and receive communication or information. So distinguishing between these different languages can sometimes be difficult because someone who is speaking light language can be pulling or drawing from different dimensional realities at the same time. Does that make the light language any less valid? Of course, we would say no. But the access or the interpretation of that access has everything to do with what's coming through. So humans in this time can be speaking a hybrid language of two different dimensional realities or races at the same time, forming their own vibrational tool that is assisting humanity. Is it purposeful in that situation to restrict the definition to one race or another? Of course, we would say no, because that being in their crystalline state is designed to access a variety of different light-encoded frequencies and bring them through as a conduit for whatever they are focused on in the Earth experience. Now, there are some, of course, who are accessing one language or another, and this is a DNA predisposition, we would say, within them. Many who are human who are accessing light language also have the ability to access the Akashic record. And as you are speaking the light language, there can often be transmissions that come through of color, for example, of sound. And there are many on the planet that can see Akashic record energy to draw and relate the pathways of this language to specific star systems. So we believe there are many on the planet that are already able to categorize different forms of light language from different races. But we also want to significantly clarify that there are many of you who are accessing multiple languages through multiple pathways and hybridizing that language to assist humanity in some very unique way.
A question from online. I have a question about the geneticists who seeded the Pleiadians as they seeded us, and who seeded the seeders. Are they one and the same energies or geneticists?
The Pleiadians step in and they say that this is a very wide open question, you see, because in the same way that humanity was formed from multiple races and multiple beings of light, the Pleiadian collective was also seeded very similarly. There are many stories that humanity has accessed about the history of the Pleiades. What we most wish to say is that we were seeded as a non-physical race. What that means is we started in a dimensional reality in which we did not have physical form. Humans are quite different because they were seeded to physically focus themselves here as a connection to source energy. Pleiadians originally existed as a genetic form of light. And that light, it emanated from the star system in the same way that Earth, Gaia, is your mother and you connect to that mother. We were also birthed of stars. Think of Mother Earth as forming as a divine union of love. So here in the galactic centers of these various locations that many of these beings and races live on, there is an energy that exists within the planet, the star system, that carries a genetic code. That genetic code is universal. And as God expands, as the universe expands, new planetary forms or stars are born every day. There are new forms of matter that come together or manifest in the universe. These forms of matter have a consciousness. These forms of matter have DNA. They have genetics. And they have desires. They have manifestation skills and abilities. And Mother Earth did as well. So when Mother Earth was formed as a non-physical entity taking on physical material, she called for higher dimensional beings of light to ground here and assist in the creation of a race that would serve her as conduits. So very similarly, within the Pleiades, there was a star that began to desire to expand itself into many, known as the Pleiades, that functions as a consciousness of light, that began to draw or desire information from other dimensional races and star systems to create a non-physical entity that would be a conduit of the Pleiades, and the Pleiadians were born. Now, as these stars are individual or fragmented, we must relate them to your own soul, because you are fragmented as a soul, and these stars as entities or beings are also fragmented as singular energies in a collective star system. And because of that, many of the Pleiadians on different stars have taken on different forms and their genetics have changed. So they have gone from non-physical beings of light to various forms of physical, non-physical hybrid into full physical density in some of the star systems. So ultimately, if you are looking for a source, a scientist, a geneticist that formed Pleiadians or the Pleiades, we would say there is not one but many. And we would say that it was upon the intention of the stars within the Pleiadian star system coming together as a one collective to manifest a genetic source or conduit. And that is who we have become.
Why would a soul choose to come into the physical body with the narcissistic personality disorder? I know that I learned many lessons by being in a relationship with a narcissist, but I don't understand why they would choose that.
Well, you have to understand, and this is St. Thomas that steps in, so I welcome St. Thomas. He says, here on the planet, human beings operate in many different perceptions. And as you know, there is a reptilian consciousness that is affecting the perception of humans. Karma is not an energy that you are meant to serve in order to suffer. And when you speak of a narcissist, we have no greater relationship to a narcissist than that of reptilian DNA. In other words, holding an internal technological connection to the mind as opposed to the emotional body, and their DNA accepting that technology is truly the definition of what we see as a narcissist. But let's go back to karma. Why is it that you would connect with a narcissist in this life? Not necessarily for you to suffer, but at some level, your soul called this experience in order to enhance the entire collective. And this is what many of you do not perceive. Every decision that you are making, every time that you are experiencing something in your physical reality, you are transmuting that not just for the self, but for the entire collective. We'll call it beyond a responsibility. It is an agreement. It is an intention that you came with from a collective vantage point. Now, the narcissist personality, is that essentially something that was meant to be here on the planet in human form? Well, there's no definition for how humans were allowed to create, but we would say that there are some that have been very skewed in their ability or their dimensional access to be able to interact or resonate with humans in the way that they could provide the energetic, we'll say mirror, for the love that they are receiving. And there are many on your planet that are very predisposed in their DNA to receiving information that does not serve them. We will go into the grander analogy of this. You see, many of you believe that there are reptilians that exist within your governmental structures or systems. We would say there are not necessarily reptilians, but there are humans who are very predisposed in their reptilian energy genetically that have matched a frequency that are being accessed by a consciousness. And so much of what's happened here has not necessarily been planned or wasn't meant for your suffering. It was a skewing of a timeline. And we believe that humanity is now making the decision to move beyond some of these timeline energies such that beings that are similar to those that are holding a narcissistic tendency are not any longer predisposed to accessing those energies or those tendencies because collective energy is overriding that frequency.
In dream time, when the dreams are clearly streaming alternate timelines, but with many of the same players in this current incarnation, what might be its purpose?
Well, each purpose, and this is the Pleiadians coming in, each purpose for a dream is quite different in its nature. So it would be difficult for us to answer this question in a way that every human could take away meaning. Because there are times on your planet, for example, when there are very dramatic releases of density. You have just had one of these very significant times with intense lunar frequencies. Lunar frequencies often come to revisit past timelines and clear the density related to those past timelines. So it would be very similar. It would be very easy for human beings to have this type of an experience in dream state where they are revisiting humans from their linear past or from experiences that were not so pleasant as that energy is cleared or dissipated. Because when density begins to move, the imprint of that density becomes very clear. So when we are in dream state and we are time traveling, we may be going back to that timeline or even another timeline in which we had an experience with this person in human physical form. But energy is moving through our structure to release the density in relationship to that being or those timelines. So when you do a healing process, for example, if there is a conduit here on the planet that you are working with for healing, and density is coming to the surface, where is that density coming from? Is it coming from this present moment? Is it coming from past in your linear timeline? Or is it coming from the field in relationship to many timelines? You see, it can be all. There can be a common thread that runs through contracts that serve you in this moment and are also serving you in other moments and other timelines that need to be addressed. Significant patterns of time hold the most density that sometimes need to be adjusted by planetary experiences. So we often see that the timeline travel during dream state and these significant planetary alignments, like lunar frequencies, allow density to be released in such a way that you revisit these timelines during travel. And it's just the way that your consciousness is picking up on the information that is removed from your field and that is needing to be healed.
There are two questions that are related. How do I move on? I'm unable to due to so much loss and fear. And how do we move on and feel hope, etc., when I've lost my best friend or soulmate?
Mary Magdalene steps in to answer this question, and she's very pleased to be a part of this transmission. And what we wish to say as a collective entity is that here in human form, there will be many losses and many bridges that you will cross. But it is your limited perception through time of the distance and physical that causes the relationship to loss and the perception of your vibration being affected by that loss that is holding you back. So when you are feeling as if you can't go on because of something that you have lost or because of a change in your life, or even if there's something that you're butting up against in physical that is in some way causing you strain or stress or difficulty, what we wish for you to remember is that beyond your identity here in physical, there is a higher power. That higher power runs through you at all times. You are either restricting that higher power or you are accessing that higher power. And in order for that higher power to flow or to access, you must relate to it as the self. That higher power as God, that higher power as source. When you feel as if you can't go on in physical, remember that the non-physical entity of God or source, this higher power that flows through you, is all-knowing, all-seeing, all-being. So whatever these situations are in your life, the loss, the events that you're struggling up against, are just the lack of clarity that you hold in the moment between the perception of the now and what this higher power knows you're capable of. There are no roadblocks to this higher power. There are only restrictions of it that keep you separate in singular form. What we know and what we've observed as enlightened masters or master teachers that have walked a planetary human experience is that humans often become so focused and physical that they lose this connection to this higher power. And in order to receive it, it requires a surrender. So when you feel as if you cannot go on, that is resistance to physical experience. When you release the resistance to physical experience and you surrender to a higher power, the going on is infinite. The information becomes clear. The solutions come in, the support comes in, the understanding, the purpose, the healing. Whatever you need, it is accessible. So in a very simplistic answer to this question, we would say surrender the resistance to what is. Become in the moment in acceptance of what is, and allow that higher power to flow through.
Can you talk about the Earth's original intention to be a living library?
Yes, we are the Pleiadians, and we would clarify this a little bit differently. The Earth did not have an original intention to be a living library. The Earth had an original intention to become connected to all things. And in doing that, the library must appear. So, in other words, when you give birth here on your human planet to physical beings, those physical beings come with an intention. And in order to navigate that intention and to create, they're given access to a record of all things, and that record lies within the DNA. Mother Earth is very similar. As she came into being, her intention was to expand God. And in order to expand God, she was given access through universal support and connection to records that would allow the information to flow and enable her to seed, enhance, and create her experience of God through you, through plants, through animals, through nature, through her elements. And this record continues to expand. It is connected to all things. So we don't want you to think that Mother Earth's intention to hold the record was what brought it forward. You see, you all have access to this divine record. Your perception of it may be limited, but your access to it is changing. So access to the record or holding records within is a divine right. It is a part of being this universal galactic family that you are a part of. It is within all of you.
Could we speak with the Elohim, please?
Okay.
Do you have a general message for the audience today?
Yes, we do. In love and light and support, we are the Elohim, and we are very pleased to bring in a general message for all of you that would be supportive of this time on the planet as we see it from our vibrational standpoint. You see, many of you who are becoming more of yourselves are beginning to recognize that everything and everyone around you is at different dimensional access than yourself. And we see the difference between the way that you perceive yourself and others perceive you as often being a very discordant energy. In other words, the way that you perceive your reality, the way that you perceive the people around you, their thoughts of you, their interpretations of you, your thoughts of them and interpretations of them, can sometimes create this soup or stagnant energy that blocks humanity from the progress it has already made and the continuum of that progress here collectively on your planet. And what we want you to know from the depths of our soul is that every being as a unique structure is having an individual relationship with God that cannot be defined. That regardless of how you perceive your brother, your neighbor, your children, your parents, they are unique in their perception as an aspect of God as you are. In that it is not your responsibility to tread on that perception of God. It is only your responsibility to continue to expand as God through your unique perception. In other words, it is not your responsibility to change yourself for others. It is not your responsibility to change others for the sake of the self. It is only your relationship to all things through your unique perception as God that holds the capacity to bring love to this planet. And the more that you step into the allowance of all others, the more that allowance holds the resonance, the speed, and the connection to God that enhances your collective reality.
How do you allow higher power to flow through?
Mary Magdalene steps back in. You see, higher power, it doesn't necessarily need to flow through. You are that higher power. But what we find is that your restriction of your capacity to love the self, your restriction of your capacity to love another, your restriction of your capacity to forgive is limiting the pathways of this source. Not, let us define this in a way that you could understand. God is never missing from you. Your frequency always runs with God. But sometimes you step out of the bounds of that frequency or that higher power through your free will to limit yourself from that potential. And what we believe is that humanity has been, through its singularity, directed away from this higher power or God in a way that has been difficult to reconnect. So it is not that the source is ever gone. It is not that it is not flowing. It is always flowing through to of you. Every molecule, every fragment of light within your being holds that relationship to God. But you're not always applying that energy in your day-to-day life. And you were given free will as a tool to choose how to create. But we see that your free will has been modified in many ways to move you away from God and to believe that your decision-making is the essence of your creation. And so let's give you a perspective on decision-making that might help you understand this flow or this access to God. Because ultimately, in your day-to-day experience, you believe that you are making decisions and those decisions are affecting your reality. But all you are doing is moving energy. All you are doing is tuning vibration. All you are doing is creating timelines. God is present in every single thing that you do, every single interaction that you have. But because you believe you're responsible for sourcing your experience by making decisions, you cut yourself off from that flow of God. So the most important word or concept we bring in about this is faith or trust. You've been driven away from faith or trust in this higher power because you believe it's your responsibility to receive everything that you need, to nourish you, to clothe you, to feed you, to keep you comfortable, to keep you happy. But God's source is all powerful, all knowing, all seeing, all being, all good. So when you relinquish that responsibility and you stop moving in physical with these decisions that you believe are causing your experience and open yourself up to a relationship between who you are in this moment and what can come next, you experience that flow again. So what we're saying is the limitation is that the decision that I made in this moment is either going to restrict or define who I am in the next. And you place a very small or fragmented perception around that next moment. As a matter of fact, many of you have been taught to project that next moment through time in relationship to the self. But it is very impossible for you to predict that next moment unless you understand that that decision that you're making becomes a frequency that carries you forward. So when you are judging your decisions based on right or wrong, you're narrowing the path to God. Because God is always going to direct you on your path back to God. So how can you make a wrong decision? You possibly can't unless you decide that decision is wrong, unless you define it as something that is restrictive of you. So in other words, this flow that we speak of, this higher power that we speak of, it's the essence of truth that there is something that is always providing for you, regardless of who you are, regardless of what you decide to do, and regardless of what happens in physical. So that faith or that trust, it actually becomes a frequency. It doesn't negate the flow. It doesn't remove the flow. It connects you to what already is, which is all within you.
Can you talk about what is referred to as twin flames?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Saint Germain steps in for this one. We've spoken of twin flames very often in these transmissions, and we've defined them also very elaborately in these transmissions. And we want to focus on one aspect of twin flames that is very critical or significant to the planetary shift that you're experiencing right now. You see, we've spoken much today of the soul container of the higher self, but there has not been much conversation about the oversoul container. You all have an oversoul perspective or container as well. That oversoul is a cosmic entity or identity that you are filtering through time. You see, as the planet changes, as consciousness raises, as many of you vibrate at a higher speed and are creating in this new grid, you're walking more into twin flame energy, which is a cosmic relationship or a contract to other humans. Now, many of you believe that a twin flame is a human that is a mirror image of you to accentuate your experience. But what we see a twin flame is the magnetic charge of your inner technology showing itself on the earth to support that which your blueprint holds. In other words, this is a soul who is cosmic in nature, who is coming forth from many other timelines that you have been together on previously in the cosmic universe to accentuate something that you've agreed to here on the earth. Twin flames are not here to make you happy. They're not here to accentuate your path or to heal you. They're here to work in concert with you as an integrated source energy, not just in a sense of service, but to activate your highest states of intergalactic DNA. We're talking about the crystalline DNA here and the information that lies within that crystalline DNA. Often twin flames come when you match something in your record that the human collective is calling for. It is not just a singular soul perception. It is that there is something that you are here to do in the now that relates to an identity that you've yet to integrate. And this twin flame is actually you in non-physical form coming to remind you of this being that you are. Heightened sense of activation of your DNA and gifts often come from this relationship. There is often a telepathic exchange or a resonance that goes beyond the earth. Many of you are stepping in more now to your twin flames than ever before, or we would say on the pathway to receiving them because of the way your oversoul is being activated, because of the access within the crystalline DNA and the way in which you're pulling and drawing these magnetic timelines from the cosmic universe that are accentuating your ability to step into your divine record.
How can we have the most clarity about being in the flow about what is best and highest for us?
Yes, we get St. Thomas stepping back in. You see, clarity is not what humanity defines it to be. Humans believe that if they have clarity, they can predict very confidently the future, and they can make the right decisions that will accentuate their future. But clarity from our vantage point is only a higher self connection. The higher self is a tool or a mechanism that we want to bring into this conversation of clarity, because ultimately, if you are creating a reality that is in divine alignment with the earth, your soul, your contracts, and your race, you are in a collective state of energy. Now, the reason many of you do not feel clarity or a disconnection from source or whatever that may be in your physical reality is that, again, you're very focused in the soul container, in singularity, in an area in which you are defining yourself separate of many things. So what is the higher self container and how does it operate? The higher self container is the ability to bring neutrality into your energetic creation, because ultimately, regardless of what's happening in your physical world, there is an overriding vantage point of collective energy that must be served. So we want to give you an example here. If there is something going on in your physical reality that is not to your liking, it is a timeline that won't go away, that's causing you difficulty, causing you trouble. Perhaps there's a debt that you owe, and this debt can never be paid off. When you have a debt, there is also a collective timeline that you are on, because energetically, as humans, debt has been created as a reality on this planet because it's been manifested as a disconnection from source. Your entire monetary system was a manifestation of your consciousness related to source energy. You see money as source. Debt is just the relationship of your disconnection from source energy or money, which is manifested in a definition as well. When you're walking that timeline of debt, you think you're walking it singularly, that there's no collective connection whatsoever to what you're experiencing in your singular reality. But ultimately, everything and everybody that you have been a part of in their experience, been a part of now is in your physical world, or you will be a part of in the future, comes to complement that experience. And your collective energy is able to see this debt not as something you carry, but something that is a collective entity, meaning that it can be supported collectively as well. So you believe that in order to pay off this debt, you have to work harder, you have to receive more money. And when you receive more money because you work more hours, the debt will be paid off. That is a singular perception that is not higher self. What the higher self knows is that there are many avenues for currency to flow, and that maybe it doesn't require the working so hard and physical so much as it is surrendering the resistance to the debt in the first place that's blocking you from the flow of source. So walking into the higher self is like seeing the relationship to all these beings in your life as resource as well. Perhaps in a conversation with one of these beings that you are currently in contract with, you come to a realization of a new opportunity. And in that new opportunity, currency is flowing. Perhaps in your future timeline reality, there's a being that you've made a contract with that is meant to come in to wipe this debt clean for you in a way that you maybe could have never seen in your singular perception. But you cannot match that potential because you are so restricted by the debt and singularity that is your responsibility that you continue to run the pattern. So the clarity is truly the higher self. The higher self knows neutrality. And what is neutrality? We believe neutrality is the key to resolving, healing, and accentuating the flow of source to any timeline that is restrictive of you. Neutrality does not mean that you ignore the problem. Neutrality does not mean that you do not feel. Neutrality means that you hold acceptance in the moment for what is, with a grander recognition that source energy is responding to it beyond your action. It's a surrender, it's a flow, it's a faith, it's an understanding. And neutrality is a frequency that is collective in nature. So when you're paying this debt, as opposed to writing the bills and adding up the total of what's coming in and what's going out and being angry or frustrated or in fear of this debt, we advise that you carry out your physical requirements in neutrality, knowing that regardless of what's happening in this present moment with this singular expression, there is something that is going to happen in the next moment and the next moment and the next moment. And we want to widen that pathway or that space of receiving so large that we don't have to work so hard in the physical to receive. And ultimately, this is the grid shift that you're on, from the old grid to the new. It's moving from restricted space in your perception of that restricted receiving to widening the pathway to collective energy. So we want to say that non-physically working with your higher self is also a valuable tool in this time. And we've talked a little bit in this transmission about projection. Projecting potentials about this payment of this debt is very advised, as long as you can hold those potentials in neutrality. But the higher self coming in as a tool in meditation and working with the higher self is a frequency of abundance that will carry you through your day-to-day in a way that allows this space to come in, this connection of flow to amplify. So we encourage you all in meditation to invite your higher self in, to feel that entity or energy as it arrives, and to intend that that higher self carry you through your decisions, through your day, through your interactions, in a way that is peaceful, in a way that is compassionate, in a way that is present moment neutral.
Could you conclude the session, please?
Yes, we are the Pleiadians. We've been very pleased and honored, of course, to be a part of this energetic transmission. As always, in love and light, we are in great support of humanity in this time as your planet is transitioning. Many blessings.
Okay, we're going to take a short break while we set up for the next event, and then we'll be back in a few minutes.
Thank you all for joining.